Mizmor Lasaf. God, the nations have entered your land. They have defiled your holy temple. They have reduced Jerusalem to a heap of stones. They have given the bodies of your servants as food for the birds of heaven, the flesh of your beloved ones to the beasts of the earth. They have poured out blood like water all around Jerusalem, and there is none to bury them. We have become a joke to our neighbours, an object of scorn and derision to those who surround us. How long, Lord, will you be angry forever? Will your ardour burn like fire? Pour out your burning anger upon the nations that do not know you, upon the kingdoms which do not call on your name, for they have devoured Jacob and ravaged his pastures. Do not remember our father's guilt. Let your compassion come quickly to meet us, for we are brought very low. Help us, O God of our salvation, for the glory of your name. Deliver us and cover our sins because of your name. Why should the nations say, "Where is their God?" Before our eyes let there be known among the nations the requiting of the shed blood of your servants. Let the sighs of the prisoners come before your face. By the greatness of your arms set free the children of death, and pay back 7 times into the pocket of our neighbours the taunts with which they have taunted you, O Lord. And we, your people, the sheep you shepherd, will thank you forever. From generation to generation, we will recount your praise. So see, I mean, this has quite a lot of similarities, doesn't it, to the sort of setting of Psalm 74, which we were talking about not so long ago. But I think you mentioned that this is one of the Psalms that is actually that is recited at the Wailing Wall, because it does have this kind of obviously thing about Jerusalem.
There's a triad of Psalms, 74, 79, and 137, and they're all about the sort of destruction of the temple. And this one is, as you rightly says, got lots of links with 74, the cry of why, the cry how long, the reference to the actual temple itself being desecrated and defiled. You know, they're very, very similar patterns going on here. And for me, the extraordinary thing is you read the end of 78, which is about God's choice of David and everything's going to be fine. And suddenly, wham, you know, you read, oh God, the nations have come into our inheritance, have just been promised one. So the actual ways in which the Psalms are placed together, yet again, to me, makes it very much even more poignant than reading it on its own. But yes, 74 and 79 go together, and certainly 137, which is used with 79 I think I'm trying to remember, on the 9th of Av, that's right, to commemorate the destruction of both the first and second temples, recited at the Wailing Wall right up to the present day. And from Jewish history, it's been, you know, it's when Antiochus Epiphanes demanded the obeisance of the Jews, you know, and a lot were martyred for their faith in 167, and Titus, you know, in the destruction of the temple in 70. All these times when the psalm became utterly relevant a second time. It's fascinating to see it through Jewish history.
And through Christian history as well. I mean, you sort of
absolutely
Augustine
in this case, in this particular psalm, parallel uses. Yeah, the sack of Rome in 410, yeah, and both Jerome and Augustine refer to that. Then it's obviously Crusades. It became an important psalm, and then later still, of course, when you've got it's used by the Huguenots, but also in 1608, when the Catholics were being burned at London Bridge, it was used very much in terms of Catholic experience. So its pain unites a lot of different communities in their different circumstances. You know, as we were saying earlier, it's a little bit like a universal cry for peace, you know, world peace. So
yeah, so it has its resonances again now, as you were saying, as it did for me when I wrote one of the worst points in the pandemic. Yeah.
Yes. Well, I mean that, obviously as you say, it kind of it fits quite a lot of situations, and I mean that very much. I mean, Malcolm, you very much used it for the actual situation you were writing in at the time. But perhaps we'll come on to that in a second. But perhaps I'll just sort of start by welcoming everyone again. Particularly if you haven't been with us in these discussions, there actually is an archive of them, which I'll put in the links below, so you can look at all of the ones we've done over the past almost 2 years now, isn't it? We've been doing these. So, but they were based, as we were just saying, on books we all were writing during lockdown. So David's Crown was Malcolm's 150 poems responding to the 150 Psalms. Psalms Through the Centuries is Sue's. Well, it's a commentary, but also a kind of reception history of all the Psalms. So it's both in, as we were hearing, in sort of Jewish and Christian, and but also in literature and art and music. And then the Book of Praises, which is a selection of the illustrated translations that I did, which we're just nearly coming to an end to now. But anyway. So yeah, I mean, your poem, Malcolm, is, as we were saying, seemed very much to come out of that experience of the time that you were writing it.
Yeah, well, I think it was fascinating to hear from Susan the way this got a new life each time it became the voice of lamentation for a series of historic tragedies or losses. Whether it was the fall of Rome or so on. And in a sense, we were in such a kind of colossal thing during that period. I think I happened in my progress through the Psalter, where time and again I found these ancient poems and prayers just gave me the language my heart needed, and helped me to utter a lamentation or to state the worst. And it was at that particular point when there was no vaccine yet. The number of mortalities was rising exponentially. And there was some consideration about the sheer volume of bodies that, could they find, there was plans afoot at one point to make burial spaces in Central Park in New York. There were TV shots of ambulances with people dying and in some cases dead, sort of backed up. At hospitals, and that sense of, so particularly therefore the line about there was no man to bury them, that suddenly touched on me. But the sense of catastrophe and the sense of all kinds of things being things you just took for granted, the schooling of your children, the ordinary decencies of public life, all these things had been put on hold, and what was unfolding allegedly to replace them in people's sudden deep dives into social media in the constraints often turned out to be a kind of infiltration into hearth and home of all kinds of really horrible conspiracy theories and, the kind of heathen coming into thy inheritance, where the sense of lots of certainties being disrupted were all there, and they became part of the way I framed the poem. And I start with a lamentation of what, as I read it, what was happening to us now. And then in the third stanza, I say, okay, I'm going to take comfort from this psalm, just to know that I'm not alone. The psalmist also, face this deadly test, and the sense that there's a long tradition of getting through calamity and allowing calamity to bring you closer and closer to God, and wedding you even more strongly to, even though you're puzzled by God, even though you're asking God why, that you don't lose that connection. And the Psalms seem to me to articulate that brilliantly. That God is not.
Yeah, I love the way you picked up that idea of patient tenderness, the very last bit of Psalm 78, the hopeful bit. And obviously that had to be your first line of the next one, but actually it made such sense. It's still there, even though...
And also,
momentous wickedness.
And because I know about God's patient tenderness at the beginning of this, in a sense, that gives me the frame or the security or the safety net to let myself go and saying, bloody hell, this is awful. You know?
Yes, yes. Well, I suppose that was it's. I mean, I was sort of puzzled in way how to illustrate this because you know, to show kind of dead bodies rotting is, you know, isn't particularly helpful. I mean, because it's there in the psalm and you want to, but it's not actually. It's that sort of holding on is what I wanted to. I mean, and so that right just in the middle of the psalm when it has, you know, let your compassion come quickly to meet us. It's a lovely word, rachema, which is kind of it come from womb of tenderness, and just right in the middle of all this horror, there's this longing for God's sort of tenderness to come quickly. And so the picture that came to my mind was the prodigal son. I mean, when he comes back and is so low, and the father actually comes running toward him. And so it's I mean it's not an obvious image for the
You
son.
have that beautiful image of the father, and also the like a shepherd because it is a beautiful image because you get both the desolation of that psalm, but also that hope of the running figure. Yeah.
Which is well, I mean, there's quite a lot one could say about the. I mean, it's a, you know, it goes on for almost in the psalm to, you know, wanting their enemies to be sort of punished and so on. We could sort of talk about all that, but I think perhaps actually it would be nice to have your poem, Malcolm, because I mean, just quickly looking at that. I mean, I was struck by yeah, I mean, it ends actually with that, with a prayer, doesn't it, of our sighs and pleas to bring us swift relief. And it's actually almost taking up that image of
it picks up your swift. I think this. I didn't go into the imprecations and bring it down all on the nations and all of that. I didn't pick that up, except possibly obliquely in the line, we choose for one another life or death. That there are a series of life and death, you know, and there's a contest going, you know, shall we put our old people at risk in homes by clearing them out of the hospitals in order to make room for all that stuff.
Yes.
Anyway, I'll read you the poem, shall I?
Yeah, please.
So, he pulled me through with patient tenderness, and now I need his patience in my soul. For now, I feel the force of wickedness and fear the worst in us will take control and make a ruination of the best as this long trial and crisis takes its toll. The psalmist also faced this deadly test, so many dying every day, no space or even time to bury them. Pressed on beyond what's possible, we face our dark dilemmas every day. We choose for one another, life or death. We race against the clock, and still we fear to lose the lives we seek to save. Oh, Jesus, hear our sighs and pleas and bring us swift release.